Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into today's video. We're going to have a look at weather for the next 8 to 10 days. In today's video, it looks as though we're going to be keeping it quite changeable actually, but it's going to get gradually cooler I think over the next 8 to 10 days. Not talking about widespread blizzards and sort of snow sweep across the whole country, but I think it could bring some sort of wintry type conditions into the mix with the areas of low pressure coming in through the next 8 to 10 days. Now it's a very complicated pattern, so I'll run through the charts in a moment. Not got great confidence about it, to be honest. It all hinges on low pressure again cutting off to the south. And of course, we've been here before this winter with low pressure becoming cut off to the south and allowing colder air to come in. So I'll have a look at that in a moment, but before I get on with that, just want to talk about the advertising. There's video ads on my page, is at gazweathervids.com. When you hit play on the video ad, you'll be supporting gazweathervids.com. It pays for the website basically, so by you getting involved and clicking play on the video ad, you're supporting gazweathervids.com, and thanks very much for doing that. Just want to quickly talk about the situation on Friday. Did a video yesterday saying that we may get some sort of wintry conditions coming along Friday into Saturday. Doesn't look like it's going to happen now, because the low pressure that I was thinking may stall over the country is actually stalling to the west of the country now on Friday. So this is the chart for Friday with the low pressure out to the west, the weather system out to the west of the country. You can see on the rainfall forecast that the rain now is being restricted just to Ireland and the far southwest of England. It never makes it in across the country. So Friday's actually looking like quite a dry day away from the far west, but it will be quite cold. As we push through to Saturday, then we're starting to get low pressure coming in off the Atlantic. So we're never really going to get this situation where we could get some wintry conditions, because Friday, day when it could have happened, but weather system is stalling out west. And then Saturday it looks like we're just going to get a general push of Atlantic air coming across the country, which will take milder. Maybe preceded by some snow over the Pennines and the Scottish mountains in particular. But I think generally we're just pushing through the Atlantic on Saturday itself. But then look at what it's going for on Sunday. A major area of low pressure winding up here to the north of Scotland. That is to bring colder air in from the northwest again on Sunday. But the main thing is that, well, look at those tightly packed ice bars. Really horrendous winds again, battering much of Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England. That could be a bit overdone. It's a long way off Sunday. We're only Tuesday today. So that's quite a long way off. It probably is a bit overdone. But nevertheless, it's just signalling that potential is there again at the weekend, particularly Sunday, for another absolute battering, hammering from severe gales, storm force winds across, in particular, the north of the country. Now that low pressure could become a trigger low as it starts to move southwards. So let's have a look at the rest of the charts. And we're going to go out to the 8 to 10 day 500 millibar height anomaly mean flow next, and this is the chart here. We've got the ECMWF of course on the left, the GFS is over on the right. As you know, 500 millibars, 18,000 feet, is where we've got weather taking place. High pressure and low pressure are forming in the atmosphere and being moved around by the jet stream running above. So this is for 8 to 10 days time, which is taking us more or less to the start of February, would you believe. And the low pressure that was battering Scotland on Sunday, what it's showing here with these blue colours shifting to the south, is that the low pressure is actually becoming a cut-off feature across southern and southeastern parts of Europe. It's moving through the British Isles and down to the south of the country. Now we've still got this ever-present, well, it's not ever-present, but it's been there for a while now, block up to the northeast of the country over central northern parts of Scandinavia, stretching back into western Russia. So with the low pressure becoming cut off and moving that way, you will think that high pressure to the east would start to push in that way and try and bring us some cold east to northeasterly winds. It wants to do that, but it's all complicated by this very deep trough of low pressure, cold trough, but still sitting there over Canada and central east parts of the United States. Bitterly cold winter over much of America this year. And of course the, again, ever-present large area of high pressure in the Azores, because those two systems, the cold air over East America, the Azores high, are combining to produce a very strong jet stream running across the Atlantic. So it's still this sort of battle going on complicated pattern between high pressure to the northeast, wants to bring colder air in from the east, the low pressure being cut off to the south. That's all okay, that's setting up a cold pattern, but then in the Atlantic we've got this horrendous, if you want cold weather, horrendous situation with the deep trough in the east of the United States and the strong Azores high combined to produce this very strong jet stream running across the Atlantic. Now the ECMWF actually splits the jet and sends some of it up towards the block to inflate the block more, and some of it down to the south around that cut-off area of low pressure. It does have a look at charts as well. It does actually bring us some colder weather in eventually, but it's a very tenuous pattern. It wouldn't take much really to keep us in westerly winds once again. So the GFS, just very quickly, is similar. There's the deep trough in the States, there's the strong Azores high sitting in the Atlantic. That's all combining to produce jet stream. Then we've got the block up to the northeast of the country, wants to bring the cold easterly winds in, and we've got the low pressure becoming cut off to the south and the southeast. So both of the ECMWF and the GFS very similar, very much agreeing in the overall pattern, and again we've got the jet stream splitting here with some of the energy going up to the north, some of the energy going down to the south around that cut-off low, and probably allowing some colder air to come in from the east. But it's so tenuous this that I still really wouldn't want to be betting the houses upon it, because it wouldn't take much with that to keep us in a generally westerly flow. Now, nevertheless, the GFS ensembles are actually going for a colder spell coming up. So if we have a look at the GFS ensembles next, remember the red line here, temperature ensembles, red line is where we should be at this time of the year. We're about average, a little bit below today, but we'll go a little bit above later on. But overall, we're going to be dipping down a bit through in towards the end of the week. It's going to turn a little bit colder. Then in the weekend, with that deep area of low pressure, things are going to pick up. But then from around the 27th, something like that, we're going to go below average by the look of it. And many members of the ensemble do go below the red line. So we've got pretty good agreement here, actually. But out to the end of January into the start of February, we are turning it colder. We're going below average. And actually, there's some really quite cold members of the ensemble there. We've got one member, it is an outlier, but one member is going down to around minus 12 or minus 13 at 850 millibars. So that's bitterly cold air coming in from the east. And many members of the ensemble do turn things colder for that very end of January, start of February period. So pretty good agreement there on the face of it that we are going to see some colder conditions coming up over the next couple of weeks. The precipitation spikes again, showing that we're going to have quite a bit of rain going out to the end of January. But as we move through to the start of February, it may turn a little bit drier, but it never really turns completely dry actually. We do keep some precipitation spikes right out to the end of the ensemble chart, which is around the 5th of February. And of course, with the temperatures dipping down, with the precipitation spikes, there is the potential for some wintry conditions in places. As I say, not probably widespread sort of disruptive snowfall, but some wintry conditions if the models have got the charts correct. The temperature anomalies for the next week, the 23rd to 28th of January, showing that we're going to be a little bit below average across the British Isles. We're going down somewhere between around 0 and 2 degrees below average, as is much of Western Europe, but the real cold is to the east. And look how this has changed compared to earlier in the month. Earlier in the month, virtually the whole of the continent was bathed in the red colours, above average anomalies. Now, virtually the whole of the continent is covered with blue colours, below average temperatures, but the core is across Scandinavia and eastern and northeast Europe. Notice it's still quite warm down in the southeast, but I think that could change a little bit as we go to the end of the month. So there's that deep windstorm as we go through into Monday. It's going to batter Scotland on Sunday. It'll still be sitting there to the north of Scotland on Monday. And look what the GFS then wants to do with that low pressure as we move through into Jersey. It starts to move it southwards, build pressure to the north as it ridges in from the northeast. So that's the low pressure sitting southwards and starting to become cut off. And there we go, as we move through into Wednesday the 29th, the low pressure has become a cut-off feature down to the south. It's sitting over France, into the Mediterranean and on towards Italy. That allows colder air to come down from the northeast. We've got the complicating factor of these areas of low pressure still to the north of Scotland, but it's sort of the idea that we are turning it colder next week as the low pressure becomes cut off. It all hinges on that low pressure becoming cut off, though. If the low pressure sits over the country, and this happened earlier in January when the same idea was emerging within models, if that low pressure sits over the country, it will never allow the colder air to come in from the north and northeast. Nevertheless, the GFS is showing that the low pressure does move southwards through the middle of next week. It allows colder air to come in from the east, not depths of winter, but colder would be enough to turn showers wintry. But then very quickly, the latest run of the GFS 6-o'clock run wants to reintroduce these Atlantic winds, particularly to the north and west. England and Wales will still be cold and frosty on day 10, which is Friday, the 31st of January. But it's a very, very complicated pattern, this. There's so many different elements in play here. The Atlantic, the block to the northeast, the low pressure becoming cut off. Very, very difficult for the models to get this exactly correct. So expect more changes over the coming few runs. ECMWF again has that very deep storm system to the north of Scotland at midnight on Monday the 27th of January. Moves southwards again across the country, so it's the same idea. We saw it on the high anomaly charts. Moves southwards through Tuesday the 28th. Eventually, by Wednesday the 29th, it is to the south of the country, sitting across northern France, beginning to pull in colder air from the north and the northeast. Notice the Scandinavian high has gone up to 1,045 millibars. That's a big area of high pressure. Big blocking system now sitting over Scandinavia. By the time you get through to Thursday the 30th, the low pressure has cut off to the south, so it's sitting there across southern parts of France, Spain, into central Mediterranean. Winds have gone easterly. Look at that, the winds are in from the east, now pulling cold air out of central Europe, and we maintain that cold flow through to day 10, Friday the 31st of January. Yet the high pressure is ridging through the country from the Scandinavian high. Winds are in from the east, so any showers around the eastern coast would almost certainly be wintry with that. But again, we've got a very active Atlantic, deep area of low pressure to the south of Greenland, and the whole thing is sort of very much on a knife edge there. You could easily push that low pressure through and never really turn it cold, never really turn the winds into the east. And if that low pressure doesn't cut off to the south, again, we won't introduce that easterly wind. So a very, very complicated pattern. But look at that, the central pressure by Friday the 31st of January with that Scandinavian Siberian high is up to 1,055 millibars. That really is a very intense area of high pressure blocking things out over Russia and Scandinavia. That is high enough to fend off the Atlantic, that central pressure. If it gets to that sort of region, 1,050, 1,060 millibars, it's high enough to, that's a high enough pressure to fend off even the most active Atlantic. So it's very interesting that the GFS wants to increase the pressure of that high pressure, central pressure of the high pressure, so much. Finally, moving through to the Canadian model, there's the GEM. Does that cut the low off? That's where the low is on Monday to the north of Scotland. Does it move it southwards and cut it off across the country? It does to some degree, but it's much more tenuous that than the GFS and the ECM. There it is in the middle of the week, but Wednesday the 29th. It's still more or less over the country, and the other models want it to the south of the country by then. So that's just, again, the idea. This is a very tenuous situation. The low pressure may never cut off to the south. If it doesn't, we'll never introduce those easterly winds. As we move through to day 10, what's happening is that more low pressure systems are coming in, so we never get the easterly in on the Canadian model this morning. We keep low pressure more or less around the country. So I think what we're looking at is, well, the weekend's going to be potentially quite stormy. We are looking at perhaps another battering of severe gales over the weekend. As we go into next week, we're back to this idea that the low pressure wants to shift south over the country and then cut off to the south and allow that easterly to come in through the middle and latter stages of next week. Will that happen? That's the question, and I can't answer it because we've already been here this month with low pressure being forecast to cut off to the south and allowing an easterly wind. It didn't happen. The low pressure just finished up stuck over the top of the country. So it's just a matter of waiting and seeing. Maybe this time the low pressure will cut off and will allow that easterly to come in. If it does come in easterly, it will be enough to turn things wintry. We're not talking about widespread blizzards, but certainly enough to turn things more wintry, some rain, sleet, snow, wintry showers around coast, that sort of thing. But it's a very, very tenuous pattern. So we're going to need to do more updates, see where things are later in the week. But all very interesting. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.